What if the most terrifying weapons of ancient warfare were never drawn in blood, but hidden in myth, buried in ice, or forged from the stars? Because some of them were never supposed to be found. In the ancient harbor of Syracuse, nearly 2,300 years ago, a legend took shape, one that continues to challenge our understanding of classical engineering. It's known simply as the Claw of Archimedes. According to Roman historians like Polybios and Livy, this mysterious device was conceived by the great mathematician and inventor Archimedes to defend his city from a Roman naval assault. As Roman ships approached the fortified coastline in 214 BCE, eyewitnesses described mechanical arms, massive cranes, reaching down from the walls, lifting enemy vessels from the sea, and dashing them against the rocks or capsizing them entirely. But no physical trace of the claw survives. No gears, no levers, not even a sketch. All that remains are the accounts, often secondhand, written years after the siege. Yet the idea persists, compelling modern engineers and historians to attempt reconstructions based on the known principles Archimedes developed: pulleys, levers, and counterweights. Some believe the claw could have worked, functioning like a maritime trap, hoisting ships by their prows and rendering them useless. Others argue it's a tale exaggerated by time, a metaphor for Archimedes' genius rather than a literal machine. Even today, the Claw of Archimedes hovers between history and myth, a feat of engineering either lost to time or never truly real. But if it did exist, how many other machines might Archimedes have designed, now buried in silence beneath centuries of forgotten stone? In the dusty pages of ancient warfare, one name emerges with an invention so advanced, it seems centuries ahead of its time: Philo of Byzantium and his remarkable creation, the Polybolos. Designed in the 3rd century BCE, this repeating crossbow wasn't just a weapon, it was a mechanical marvel. Unlike traditional bows or even standard torsion-powered ballistae, the Polybolos could load and fire bolts in rapid succession without manual reloading. Philo's descriptions speak of a complex system of gears, chains, and a rotating magazine, enabling the operator to shoot dozens of bolts with rhythmic precision. It operated almost like a conveyor of death. As one bolt launched down its wooden track, the next would drop into place. The entire process, firing, reloading, and resetting, was driven by a hand crank, a mechanism more in line with industrial machines than battlefield weapons of the Hellenistic world. But despite detailed accounts, no working example has ever been found. Archaeological digs across ancient Greek military sites have yielded fragments of torsion engines, but nothing matching the intricacy of Philo's design. Some historians even question whether it was ever built at all, or merely a theoretical blueprint recorded for posterity. Yet, the concept continues to fascinate engineers and scholars. Reconstructions based on Philo's texts have proven the idea is mechanically sound. But whether the Polybolos ever stood atop a battlement, unleashing volley after volley into enemy lines, remains unknown. If such a machine truly existed in antiquity, what other feats of forgotten engineering might still lie hidden in ancient scrolls, waiting to be built? Unearthed from a waterlogged tomb in China's Hubei province in 1965, the sword of Gojian emerged not rusted and broken, but gleaming, sharp, and untouched by time. For archaeologists, it was less a discovery and more a revelation. Dating back over 2,000 years to the spring and autumn period of ancient China, the sword is attributed to King Gojian of Yu, a ruler famed for his cunning and patience in war. But the true mystery lies not in the legend, but in the blade itself. The sword is made of bronze, an alloy normally prone to corrosion. And yet, it appeared from the tomb almost perfectly preserved. Its surface shines with intricate black decorations. Inscriptions in ancient script identify its royal origin. And remarkably, tests showed it could still cut paper with ease. Experts believe a combination of sulfur and other chemical treatments helped protect the blade from oxidizing. But how artisans of that era achieved such precise metallurgical control remains uncertain. The blade's resistance to tarnish, its near-perfect balance, the microscopic serrations along its edge. all suggest a level of craftsmanship that modern metallurgy still struggles to replicate without advanced tools. And so the sword of Gojin stands, silent, flawless, enduring. A weapon built not just to kill, but to defy the ages. Was it the product of lost techniques? Or something more deliberate, an attempt to forge a legacy that, quite literally, could never be dulled by time? In the theaters of ancient Roman warfare, few machines commanded more raw, chaotic force than the onager, a siege engine named after the wild ass. For the way it kicked back when fired, the onager's true inner workings remain partly veiled in mystery. Described by Roman engineers like Vegetius and Ammianus Marcellinus, the onager was a torsion-powered catapult, designed to hurl massive stones against fortress walls. Unlike earlier Greek designs, it used a single vertical arm embedded in twisted rope bundles made of sinew or hair. When released, the arm snapped forward with brutal speed, launching its projectile from a sling or bowl at the top. But here's where the mystery deepens. Despite multiple ancient descriptions, no two match in full. Some refer to a sling mechanism that doubled the range. Others suggest a fixed cup. Roman sketches are vague. Medieval versions differ even further. Reconstructions in modern times have produced wildly different results in range, accuracy, and mechanical recoil. Moreover, the physics behind its torsion system, how tightly the rope was wound, how long the arm should be, the precise loading tension, all remain subjects of debate. Even its recoil was said to be so violent, crews had to anchor it with earth or stone to prevent collapse. Was the onager a standardized weapon of empire, or an evolving concept, adapted and reinvented across legions and centuries? What we know is impressive. What we don't suggests there may still be more to uncover about this ancient engine of destruction, hidden in the silence of ruined fortresses and forgotten manuals. For centuries, the mangonel has appeared in textbooks and illustrations as a cornerstone of medieval siege warfare, a torsion-powered engine flinging stones through the air with devastating force. But what if that image is a myth? The so-called torsion mangonel is often depicted as a Roman-style ballista scaled up, with a vertical arm powered by twisted ropes or sinews, similar to the onager. Yet, historians and military archaeologists have found little to no physical or textual evidence of such machines in medieval Europe. Surviving medieval manuscripts describe mangonon or mangonel devices, but the mechanisms are rarely detailed. By the early Middle Ages, torsion technology had largely faded. Instead, the traction trebuchet, powered by human or counterweight energy, took center stage. And yet, for centuries, scholars conflated earlier Roman torsion engines with later medieval machines, creating a hybrid that may never have existed. No archaeological remains of a torsion-based mangonel have ever been conclusively identified, and no working medieval drawing shows the distinctive torsion spring frame necessary for such a machine. Reconstructions based on presumed designs have yielded inconsistent and often underwhelming results. The image persists, born of assumption and artistic imagination more than historical record. Was it an honest misunderstanding of ancient texts, or a romanticized vision of medieval might? Whatever the origin, the torsion mangonel serves as a reminder. Not all weapons remembered by history were ever truly built. It was the terror of the seas, a weapon so feared, so effective, that its very formula was treated as a state secret of the Byzantine Empire. Known simply as Greek fire, it could burn atop water, cling to ships, and continue to blaze even as sailors leapt into the waves. But while its chemical mystery has long captivated historians, its delivery system is equally elusive. Sources from the 7th century onward describe Greek fire being launched from siphons mounted on Byzantine ships, often likened to early flamethrowers. These devices, called kyrosophones, supposedly projected the liquid fire in pressurized streams, igniting enemy vessels before close contact was ever made. Some accounts suggest handheld versions were also used, as well as clay grenades filled with the incendiary substance and hurled at advancing forces. But none of these devices have survived. Not a nozzle, not a pressure pump, not even a full description of their inner workings. Reconstructions based on vague texts propose a combination of bronze pressure tanks, bellows, and flame sources, perhaps a heated tube or chemical igniter. But without physical evidence, their true mechanism remains speculative. How did the Byzantines pressurize the liquid? How did they ignite it safely? And perhaps most perplexing, how did they keep such technology secret for centuries? The delivery devices of Greek fire remain a blank space in ancient engineering, a lost link between myth and mechanics. If even one authentic siphon were ever unearthed, what might it reveal about the true power and precision of one of history's most legendary weapons? Among the formidable innovations of Rome's war machine, siege engines loom large, ballistae, battering rams, and towers of timber and iron. But buried within scattered references and tantalizing hints lies a rarer, more enigmatic concept: Roman hydraulic siege engines. Ancient texts, including those of Vitruvius and Hero of Alexandria, describe water pressure being used in machinery, but almost never in combat. Yet fragments of commentary and a handful of speculative reconstructions suggest the possibility that Roman engineers may have experimented with hydraulic systems to power or enhance siege equipment. Some theorize about the use of water-filled counterweights to stabilize massive torsion machines. Others point to the use of water pressure to lift drawbridges or lower heavy battering rams from within siege towers. Even more elusive are references to water organs adapted for signaling in battle, devices that used air and liquid compression, possibly hinting at broader mechanical applications. But hard evidence is scarce. No components, no pumps, no preserved machinery, only the knowledge that Roman aqueduct and plumbing systems were extraordinarily advanced for their time. Could that engineering mastery have extended into the realm of warfare? If so, it suggests a hidden layer to Roman military ingenuity, one not of brute force, but of controlled pressure and precision. A siege not just of walls, but of physics. And so the question lingers, did Rome merely conquer with iron and stone, or did it once harness water as a silent weapon behind its war machines? In 1901, sponge divers off the coast of Antikythera, Greece, recovered a corroded bronze artifact from a sunken Roman-era shipwreck. What they found would become one of the greatest enigmas in the history of ancient technology: the Antikythera mechanism, widely accepted today as a complex astronomical calculator, capable of predicting eclipses, planetary movements, and lunar cycles. The device stunned researchers with its sophisticated gearwork, but amid its many interpretations, one speculative theory has quietly surfaced among fringe historians and experimental archaeologists. Could a version of this mechanism have been adapted as a bolt-launching device? The idea stems from parallels between its internal gearing system and the principles behind rotational tension in ancient siege engines. Specifically, some have pointed to the potential use of geared torque control to regulate a repeating crossbow, or even to automate the loading and release of bolts, mechanically, precisely, and perhaps lethally. While no evidence directly connects the Antikythera mechanism to weaponry, its mechanical principles align intriguingly with certain war machines described by engineers like Philo of Byzantium. If similar gearing could guide celestial bodies, could it not also guide projectiles? Mainstream scholars remain skeptical, pointing to the device's inscriptions and known calendrical functions. But the speculation lingers, not because it's proven, but because it's possible. Could a device of astronomical mastery have shared its blueprint with instruments of war? Or are we merely projecting battle onto the stars? The truth, like the mechanism itself, lies buried in layers of time, corrosion, and silence. Towering above Roman fortifications and siege lines, the ballista was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of Roman engineering discipline and martial precision. Based on the Greek palantonon, the Roman ballista evolved into a formidable torsion-powered artillery piece, launching bolts or stones with deadly force. But despite its prominence, one mystery remains unresolved. Just how powerful was it? Ancient texts offer hints. Vegetius speaks of siege engines hurling missiles over great distances, while archaeological fragments, bronze fittings, arm sockets, and stone projectiles suggest machines of varying size and purpose. Reconstructions using these clues have demonstrated impressive results. Large-scale ballistae may have fired bolts over 400 meters and hurled 60-pound stones with crushing momentum. Yet these numbers are based on interpretation. The ropes used to generate torsion, typically sinew or hair, have long since decayed. The tension settings, winding techniques, and even the launch angles used by Roman artillery teams remain speculative. Variables like humidity, rope twist density, and mechanical stress all influence the final power output, but none are definitively recorded. Some scholars propose modular ballistae mounted on fort walls for precision targeting, while others argue for mobile field units wheeled into battle. In both cases, accuracy was key. Roman engineers likely sacrificed raw range for consistency and control. Still, without a surviving complete specimen, the true extent of the ballista's power is uncertain. What we know is formidable, but what we don't may conceal an even greater truth. Was the ballista a merely practical tool of war, or a weapon whose precision and reach have yet to be fully understood, buried beneath centuries of lost craftsmanship? In the tightly packed ranks of ancient battlefields, few formations commanded more discipline or more lethality than the phalanx. At its core stood the sarissa, a long spear stretching up to 18 feet, wielded by Macedonian infantry with ruthless efficiency. But behind its reach and design lies a lesser-known enigma, the metallurgy that made such an unwieldy weapon both functional and fearsome. Crafted during the reign of Philip II and perfected under Alexander the Great, the sarissa had to be strong enough to resist snapping, yet light enough for a soldier to carry and maneuver. Ancient sources describe iron-tipped weapons mounted on ash or cornel wood shafts, often reinforced with bronze counterweights. But how did blacksmiths of the 4th century BCE produce iron heads that could penetrate armor without bending or shattering? Modern metallurgical studies on similar-era weapon fragments reveal varying carbon levels in the iron, suggesting a form of primitive steel. Some blades show evidence of quenching and tempering techniques, where heat was carefully applied and controlled to harden the metal. Yet no treatises from the period describe these methods explicitly. Even more puzzling is the uniformity. Sarissas were mass-produced to equip thousands of soldiers. Achieving consistency in metallurgy across such quantities without advanced tools remains a subject of debate. Were Macedonian smiths applying lost heat treatment techniques by instinct or tradition? Or was there a more formalized process now lost to time? The phalanx dominated the ancient world not just through tactics, but perhaps through a deeper mastery of metal, one still awaiting rediscovery in the forge ashes of forgotten workshops. Renowned for its flowing, wave-like patterns and legendary cutting ability, Damascus steel has become a symbol of ancient metallurgical mastery. Swords forged from it were said to slice through lesser blades, retain a razor edge, and endure the harshest of battles without breaking. Yet, for all its fame, the true method behind its creation remains one of the most enduring mysteries in the history of metallurgy. Originating between the 3rd and 17th centuries CE, authentic Damascus blades were made from a crucible steel known as woots, imported from India and Sri Lanka. This high-carbon steel, when forged with precise heating and cooling cycles, produced internal structures called carbide bands, microscopic lattices that created the steel's signature patterns and unmatched resilience. But somewhere along the line, the secret was lost. By the 18th century, as trade routes shifted and traditional ore sources dried up, the production of true Damascus ceased. Modern metallurgists have attempted to recreate the process, some with promising results. Studies suggest that trace impurities in the ore, combined with specific thermal cycling and forging techniques, may have influenced the steel's crystalline structure. Yet no single method has ever fully replicated the original quality and patterning. Were ancient smiths using techniques passed down orally, nuanced and unrecorded? Or was Damascus steel the product of a rare alchemy, an unrepeatable union of raw material and instinct? The blades endure in museums and private collections, but the hands that made them and the knowledge they held have long since vanished into legend, leaving behind only the shimmer of steel and the question, how? In the ancient state of Wu, during China's turbulent spring and autumn period, tales emerged of swords so fine so impossibly sharp that they were said to cut through iron as if it were silk. These were the legendary swords of Wu, crafted by master smiths like Gan Jiang and Mo Yi, and surrounded by stories of mysticism, betrayal, and ice. Historical texts and folklore speak of swords forged not in fire alone, but cooled using snow, ice, or frozen river water. According to the Wu Yuchuanqiu and other classical sources, these weapons were tempered using rapid cooling techniques that hardened the blades to supernatural sharpness. But did such ice forging actually happen, or is it poetic metaphor mistaken for metallurgy? Some scholars interpret these accounts literally, proposing that Wu swordsmiths developed an early form of quenching, plunging hot metal into cold water or ice to induce structural hardness. If true, it would mark one of the earliest documented uses of thermal shock in blade making, centuries before it became common elsewhere. Yet, no physical example of a Wu sword has been found intact with verifiable metallurgical data. The mystery deepens with references to named blades: Zhanlu, Ganjiang, Longyuan, each said to possess unique powers, personalities, or tragic origins. Were these names symbolic, or did they represent real blades lost to time? The Wu swords remain suspended between archaeology and myth. Perhaps they were just exquisite metallurgy. Or perhaps the ancients knew something about steel, water, and the edge of perfection that we have yet to reclaim. When the tomb of Tutankhamun was opened in 1922, it revealed a treasure untouched by time. Thousands of artifacts buried alongside Egypt's boy king. Among them was a dagger, modest in size, elegant in form, and forged not of earthly ore, but from the stars. This dagger, discovered beside the mummified remains of the pharaoh, is crafted from meteoric iron, an extremely rare material in ancient Egypt. Its blade shimmers with high nickel content, a signature of extraterrestrial origin. For decades, scholars speculated. Was it ceremonial? A gift? An anomaly? In 2016, modern X-ray fluorescence analysis confirmed the dagger's composition: iron, nickel, and cobalt in proportions consistent with known meteorites. Its origin likely predates Tutankhamun himself, passed down through generations as a sacred object, its celestial nature known, if not scientifically understood. What makes the dagger truly mysterious is the time in which it was made. During Tutankhamun's reign, iron was scarce and more valuable than gold. The Iron Age had not yet begun. And yet, this blade is finely crafted with no visible welds or tool marks, a testament to techniques that, by all accounts, should not have existed in Egypt at the time. Who forged it? How did they shape iron from the sky with Bronze Age tools? And why was it placed so close to the pharaoh's body, unlike other weapons buried elsewhere in the tomb? A blade born of the cosmos, buried with a king, and still resisting the full light of explanation. Some artifacts whisper their origins, others, like this one, remain silent, glistening enigmas from beyond our world. In the annals of royal armament, few weapons blur the line between myth and metallurgy like the sword of Mughal Emperor Jahangir, crafted, according to court chronicles, from a fallen star. During the early 17th century, a meteorite reportedly landed near Jalandhar in northern India. Rather than discarding it as an omen, Jahangir saw it as a gift. He ordered the celestial metal to be recovered, melted down, and forged into blades by imperial swordsmiths. One of these weapons, fashioned in the style of Damascus steel, would become the emperor's prized possession. The story is documented in Jahangir's own memoirs, the Tuzak-i Jahangiri, where he recounts the forging of swords from the sky stone and marvels at their polish and cutting power. But what truly makes the weapon mysterious is the combination of two ancient technologies: the revered Wutz-based Damascus forging method and meteoric iron, rich in nickel and rare minerals alien to Earth's crust. Modern attempts to trace the weapon have yielded only scattered references, as no verified specimen of the meteor sword has survived or been conclusively identified. Was it gifted? Lost in conquest? Hidden away in a collection, its origin long forgotten? What remains is the tale, a sword born of fire beyond our world, shaped by the finest hands of an empire, and wielded by a ruler who saw no boundary between earth and sky. Is it legend embellished by royal prose, or a forgotten masterpiece forged in the moment when stars touched steel? Long before the rise of empires with steel and siege towers, during the murky depths of the Bronze Age, there are scattered signs of a weapon not often associated with that era: the grappling hook. But not just any hook, an early precursor to the Roman harpax, a device used to seize and immobilize enemy ships. This conceptual origin, it seems, may stretch much further back. Archaeological finds from Aegean shipwrecks and Levantine coastal sites have uncovered bronze barbed implements, some twisted into multi-pronged shapes, embedded in or near hull fragments. These are not anchors. Their construction suggests mobility, reinforced edges, and intentional shaping for penetration and grip. No surviving texts name them, but their similarity to later harpax-style weaponry raises questions. Could these early devices have been launched by hand or sling? Were they tied to rope and used to breach walls or pull enemy craft closer in naval skirmishes? Their materials, cast bronze with hardened tips, suggest intentional design, and some exhibit wear patterns consistent with violent contact against wood or hide. Roman tacticians like Agrippa would later perfect the harpax during the naval battles of the 1st century BCE, using torsion-powered ballistae to hurl hooks into enemy ships. But these Bronze Age findings suggest the idea of a tethered, forceful projectile weapon had been seeded far earlier. Did the harpax evolve independently, or did its true ancestry lie buried in the rusted remains of ships lost to forgotten coastlines and Bronze Age ingenuity? The origin of the hook that pulled ships and empires together may be older than we ever imagined. At first glance, the Lycurgus cup is a masterwork of Roman craftsmanship, a 4th century CE glass vessel housed in the British Museum, famed for its chameleon-like color. In normal light, it glows jade green, but when lit from within, it turns a deep, haunting red. A marvel of ancient nanotechnology, yes, but perhaps also a vessel with a message far darker than its artistry. Depicting the myth of King Lycurgus, who attacked the god Dionysus and was punished with madness, the cup shows the king entangled in vines, tormented by divine figures. But some scholars suggest that the imagery holds more than myth. Hidden within the composition, and possibly embedded in its symbolic narrative, are subtle references to weapons, violence, and divine retribution. The vines that entrap Lycurgus are not gentle tendrils. They resemble whips or binding chains. One figure holds a thyrsus, a ceremonial staff, rendered here more like a spear. Others wield what appear to be daggers or stylized blades, elements not typical of Dionysian depictions. These choices may reflect a Roman cultural subtext, a warning against hubris, rebellion, or perhaps the unspoken tools of imperial power. Even more mysterious is the technology behind the glass itself. Infused with nanoparticles of gold and silver, the cup may have required knowledge of materials' behavior that would not be understood again until the 20th century. Was this duality, beauty and violence, light and shadow, intentional? The Lycurgus cup shimmers between science and symbol. A drinking vessel, yes, but also a story, perhaps even a subtle archive of weaponry, encoded not in steel but in glass. What other secrets might be embedded in its shifting glow, waiting for light to reveal them? Among the military innovations of the ancient Near East, the Hittite composite bow stands as both a symbol of craftsmanship and an enduring mystery. Used by the chariot archers of the Hittite Empire, rivals of Egypt and Assyria, this bow was a crucial component of their battlefield supremacy. But what made it so powerful and so lasting? The Hittite bow was not a simple wooden arc. It was a composite weapon, meticulously layered with wood, horn, and sinew, bonded together with natural glues. Each material contributed a unique property: the horn for compression, sinew for tension, and wood for structure. The result was a bow that could store enormous energy in a compact frame, outperforming self-bows of similar size. Ancient depictions, carvings, reliefs, and surviving equipment fragments indicate that these bows were highly curved, requiring strength and training to use. And yet, remarkably, they remained functional over long periods, even in harsh climates. The secret may lie in the exact curing times, glue compositions, and wrapping techniques used by Hittite bowyers, techniques that were passed down orally and, over time, lost. Modern attempts to replicate these bows have shown they were capable of shooting arrows with lethal velocity well beyond 150 meters, impressive for weapons of the Late Bronze Age. But the precise methods of manufacture, particularly those ensuring durability and resistance to warping, remain elusive. Were the Hittites using proprietary treatments for sinew or horn? Did they understand humidity control in a way we've overlooked? The bows are gone. Their power remains only in stone carvings and battlefield outcomes. But the hands that bent them into silence may have mastered a forgotten science, hidden in layers of horn and glue. High in the frozen Altai mountains of Siberia, beneath layers of permafrost, archaeologists uncovered the tombs of the Pazyryk people, nomadic warriors of the 5th century BCE. Preserved in ice for over 2,000 years, their belongings emerged nearly untouched, including one object that reshaped our understanding of early mounted warfare: the Pazyryk composite bow. Unlike the longbows of settled cultures, the Pazyryk bow was compact, curved, and fiercely engineered for use on horseback. Its configuration was distinct, an aggressive reflex shape, bent forward when unstrung, which allowed for immense draw power in a short frame. Ideal for the rapid, fluid movement of a mounted archer galloping across the steppe. The bow's construction followed the composite tradition, a wooden core reinforced with layers of animal sinew and horn. But the Pazyryk bows were also highly ornamented, wrapped in dyed leather and sometimes adorned with felt or gold applique, combining functionality with cultural expression. What sets these bows apart, however, is their state of preservation. Found intact in frozen burial mounds, they offer rare physical evidence of ancient bow design. Still, questions remain. How were the layers bound to prevent separation under strain? What adhesives were used in freezing temperatures? And how did Pazyryk archers maintain such weapons during long campaigns? The Pazyryk bow wasn't just a tool. It was an extension of the rider, crafted for speed, force, and precision. Its design echoes through later Eurasian cavalry weapons, but its original secrets remain partially locked in the frost. How did a culture without cities or written records produce one of history's most advanced war bows? The ice preserved the form, but the full technique may have melted away with time. Swift, silent, and devastating, the Mongol recurve bow was the engine behind an empire. From the steppes of Central Asia, Genghis Khan's armies surged outward in the 13th century, conquering with a precision and range that stunned the world. At the heart of their success was not just cavalry, but the weapon each rider carried, the Mongol bow. Short, highly curved, and laminated with layers of horn, wood, and sinew, the Mongol recurve bow was a masterpiece of portable power. Its compact size made it ideal for use on horseback, yet it could deliver deadly force at ranges exceeding 250 meters. Modern tests on replica bows have shown arrow speeds of over 150 feet per second, comparable to or surpassing many later European longbows. But it wasn't just about strength. The reflex recurve design stored immense energy in a compressed form, while the sinew backing allowed the limbs to flex under tension without snapping. In freezing winters and searing summers, Mongol bowyers used fish bladders, animal glue, and horn from mountain sheep to create weapons suited for extremes. Despite centuries of use and influence across Asia and Eastern Europe, no full Mongol bow has survived intact. Only fragments, written descriptions, and mural depictions remain. How did they achieve such uniform quality across massive armies? What tuning methods or bowstring materials were used to maintain reliability in combat? The Mongol recurve bow was not merely a tool of war. It was the embodiment of nomadic engineering, a silent force that reshaped continents. And still, the finer details of its construction ride just ahead of certainty, vanishing into the wind like the riders who once drew it. In the iron grip of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, siege warfare became a science of domination. Towering walls that had once protected cities for centuries began to fall with brutal regularity. The Assyrians were relentless and inventive. Among the weapons they brought to bear was a curious mechanism, one still debated today: the possible use of hydraulics in their siege ladders. Bas-reliefs from the Palace of Nineveh and Nimrud depict siege ladders mounted on wheeled platforms, often angled steeply against enemy fortifications. In some carvings, streams of water or strange tubing-like features appear beneath or alongside the machines. Detail scholars have long puzzled over. Were these symbolic, decorative, or do they hint at an early form of hydraulic assistance? One theory suggests that water weight or primitive piston-like systems may have been used to raise or stabilize these massive ladders under battlefield pressure. With chariots, archers, and battering rams already integrated into siege operations, it's not unthinkable that Assyrian engineers could have experimented with liquid pressure to lift or anchor these engines of war. However, no physical remains of such mechanisms have been recovered. Clay tablets and reliefs tell stories in stylized form, not technical schematics. And yet, the Assyrians' understanding of irrigation, water control, and pressure dynamics, seen in their aqueducts and qanats, was advanced for its time. Could their mastery of water have flowed into warfare? Or are we misreading symbolic art as lost mechanics? The siege ladders of the Assyrians scaled walls with terrifying efficiency. Whether aided by hydraulics or not, the possibility adds a silent, fluid layer to the legacy of one of history's most formidable war machines.